Welcome to She Said Homestead, the podcast that explores homesteading from a range of perspectives. We're Sage and Mickayla, two homesteaders, each with unique experiences, properties, and future goals for our homesteads. We're discussing various homesteading topics, sharing our personal experiences as women working full-time who are managing homesteads as well, and shining a light on the stories of other inspiring homesteaders.
Before we dive in, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy our podcast, please consider leaving a review. It really helps us grow and share these homesteading stories with even more people.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Sage from Terra Nova Acres.
And I'm Mickayla from Calico Cow Acres, and we both have homesteads in Western North Carolina.
Today, we're going to be talking about a little bit of a different topic, which is actually why we started a podcast and what it's like to actually put these together. But before we get into that, why don't you tell me a little bit about your week?
So I went to Asheville on Saturday and helped a friend put up a greenhouse. Well, most of the way anyways. It was fun and hot, and I'm still a little bit sunburnt from it, but I'm glad that we were able to get some of it done. I hope that it can get finished. And then on Sunday, I started a bunch more seeds. And it's funny because I keep saying I need to give seedlings away because I have way too many, but I started squash, zucchini, or I started winter squash, summer squashes, cucumbers, melons, and pumpkins. Trying to remember them all. I've never started them early, like ahead of time before. I usually direct sow those, but since I have the greenhouse space, I figured like why not fill up more trays and start them early and maybe get a head start from like the squash bug situation. Maybe that'll help. I have no clue if it's actually going to, but I figured I'd try it. So I have, I think, 6 or 7 more trays worth of stuff started. And then I also on Sunday planted my tomatoes, which is really exciting. They're all in the ground and they're happy and they made it. They made it into the ground and I didn't kill them this year.
Okay, so how much earlier is this than you usually plant them? Because I feel like even though we have different weather, typically we tend to converge on our planting dates. And this year, it seems like you're like, well, I'm gonna try it because it's been warm, that's for sure.
Yeah, so our last frost date is usually around April 19th. And I believe it was sometime in the week of like the 14th through the 19th this year officially. Like there are no more almost even 40s on the forecast at night anymore. It's almost all in the 50s or higher. And typically our last frost date on our property doesn't follow what like our town says online anywhere. And we usually get a frost in early May. So I'm still like cautious. I'm like, I might have to cover them up. I don't know. Um, but usually I plant out like Mother's Day weekend somewhere around there.
Yeah, all the places that I've lived in the last handful of years, waiting for Mother's Day has been the conventional wisdom because there tends to be that cold snap. But I'm sure even if there is, that you'll have something to cover them and they'll be just fine. But that's exciting. I mean, I'm over here. I haven't even started like 75% of my seeds. And you already have your tomatoes in the ground. So I'm happy for you. I might be living through vicariously through you a little bit this year if things continue on this trend.
I don't know if it was just because we were there that day, but it seemed like it was pretty freaking warm at your house.
I know. I don't know how hot it actually got, but it was like at least low 80s. And I mean, the hottest it's gotten here has probably been like 75. And the difference between 75 and 85 building a greenhouse on top of brick foundation, like basically we were in an oven, is a lot, turns out. So I was not acclimated. I was struggling. And you guys were like, this is fine. This is normal. And I was like, I want to take an 8 hour nap.
Yeah, to be fair, when we were done with that, we both were like we went and got Thai food or we got I think it was Japanese food and we ate some of it in the car because we were both really hungry and we were just like dripping in sweat while we were eating this like really really hot stir fry and then we went home and Taylor had like a LaCroix in bed. I call it spicy water. He had spicy water in bed to like cool down because it was hot in our house too because it was like 85 here as well. And then we had ice cream before bed. And we passed out. And the next day we were both like, what was last night? Like it felt like a fever dream. We were literally both just like hot and sunburned. And I was like, I slept so good.
Yeah, I think that was probably night that I passed out. I don't really remember it either. I remember I shoved a whole bunch of food in my face because I was so hungry. And oh yeah, then I edited a podcast episode and then I passed out. That's what I did.
You're more productive than I was. I almost fell asleep. I was struggling on the way home to stay awake. I was exhausted, but it was worth it. It was a good day of work and I enjoyed being able to come and see all the animals and stuff. But yeah, I was sleeping good that night for sure. But yeah, I got my tomatoes in and I got a bunch of basil and marigolds, and I planted more peas because the peas that I planted before just really didn't take very well. Like a third of them germinated. I think I soaked them for too long because they were in the fridge soaking like the whole week. I was sick, like really, really sick. So I'm trying again. It might be too hot now, but I figured I'd invest like $5 more into it and see. And then I've been stocking our freezer with ice cream like crazy. I've got like quarts of it at this point in there, and I'm excited to be able to like pull those out over the next month or two, like as it's hot and have little ice cream snacks in the evening. Other than that, I've been trying to catch up on YouTube editing, trying to keep up with podcast editing, and I've been dealing with Bumblefoot with the ducks. So we have three of them wrapped up right now because their feet are still having issues.
Okay, I know Bumblefoot is a bummer, but I saw you post those little shoes on your story. Did you make those? Did you order those? What are they? Just tell me about the duck shoes, please.
Okay, so we don't actually have them on them right now. I will put them on them once we're not wrapping them with gauze. But for ducks, I don't know about chickens. I've never had it with my chickens, but for the ducks specifically, I know that you need to give them a lot of padding on their feet so that it doesn't hurt them to like walk around on it and they're not limping as much. So you can use those boots. We have gauze wrapped in like vet wrap right now, with actually like cotton balls under the gauze too to give them even more cushion. But once they heal a little bit and it's not as bad and they're like on the way to recovery from it, I plan to put the little booties on them and they're just like neoprene little boots. They're like $6 and they're not like fancy or anything. You poke their little toenails through the fronts of them and then it just basically gives them some cushion and they can go swimming in those, so it's not like you don't have to change gross gauze every day. And it just cushions their feet so that like they can keep healing. But I wouldn't use them long term. They're technically like pet duck shoes, but you can get them for like injuries and stuff too. They're really cute.
Now I know. I'm still learning homesteading things too.
Yeah, they're super cute and I wanted to try them out, but I'm like, let's wait until they don't have a ton of gauze on them because they're a little bit small. My ducks are small, but the small ones I don't think are going to fit their feet, but it's nice to have them just in case ducklings in the future ever have issues. So I figure I'll get a few sizes, but right now they have pink vet wrap and they're adorable. What were you up to this week?
I mean, yeah, greenhouse. That was a whole day effort, and it's constructed mostly. Um, a lot of the pieces are in place, but it's definitely a little wobbly, a little wonky, and so things aren't totally lining up how they need to be at 90-degree angles. So I'm gonna try to troubleshoot that with someone who volunteered to help me later this week and actually in the next couple days and see if we can figure that out. I think if we get it lined up enough for the roof panels to slide in, that'll like really help lock it in. But whether we're good enough at creative problem solving to do that remains to be seen. So until then, I don't have a functional greenhouse.
I would like to point out first, before you go further, that the wobbliness, the wonkiness of it has nothing to do with any of us putting it together. It's the greenhouse.
Yeah, it was a cheap greenhouse kit. And I knew it was a cheap greenhouse kit when I got it. And it's buildable, but yeah.
We were working with like the wrong hardware for some of it and like having to swap things out, and it was just we got off on the wrong foot. You know, I think we made the best of it.
It'll get done one way or another. I have a handful of people that I can ask who are much better at those things. than I am, who would totally be happy to lend a hand for a little bit. Just means that I have to ask for help, which is, oof, oh, so hard for me, but I can get over it. So Saturday, the whole day was the greenhouse. And then I had it in my head. I was like, oh, I'll just do, my errands, my normal stuff on Sunday. And then I got up Sunday and was like, today's Easter. Things are not open. So I just kind of did random stuff around Homestead on Sunday. And then yesterday after work, hurriedly did all of my normal weekend errands and was like, this is terrible. I never want to do this again. But yeah, that kind of threw me out of my rhythm to not be able to do errands on the weekend, and that's okay. But yeah, it's been a lot more like spring cleaning, getting rid of stuff. Finally, I kind of feel like I'm finally unpacking from moving here 3 years ago. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that I just shoved in the extra room that I never use, I never go into. And I was like, maybe I should like live in my house and like put my wall decor up and like, do the cozy things that I haven't done because I've been focusing on the outside and the animals and the gardens and everything else. So I feel like I live in my house now. That's good. That's a change.
You better be careful not to jinx yourself. You're like decorating and like getting cozy. And I feel like that just means you're gonna have to tear some walls out or something.
Oh no, don't worry. I hired some people to tear a wall out today because they were redoing a portion of my plumbing. So I live in like a 70-year-old house. It's not new, it's not fancy, but it does the job. And whenever the person or people who lived here before me decided to add the washer dryer, they just kind of jankily tacked it onto the bathroom sink. And the bathroom sink hasn't drained correctly since I've lived here. Like it's always just been a thing, but it's not been a problem for me. I just don't really notice it. And then a couple weeks ago, yeah, it backed up and like flooded my laundry room floor and became a whole thing. And I was like, all right, well, now begins the house things that I've been ignoring and have peripherally known about since I got my home inspection. So I hired some plumbers to redo all of that, and that was a chunk of change. So trying not to think about that, but I am excited to have a laundry plumbing system that vents correctly and is routed correctly, and have a bathroom sink where I can brush my teeth and the water actually drains. It's gonna be nice.
I think I already said this, but it's a life of luxury. Just making luxury improvements.
It's actually a little bit ridiculous, the small things that make me happy. Like I bought a couple new towels and I got to get rid of towels that made me mad every time I looked at them and I was like, I am truly a simple person.
I feel that. I recently got like a new bath mat. Side note, my cat already puked on it and stained it. But I recently got a new bath mat and it was so exciting. Like this feels so nice under my feet.
So really I haven't done a whole lot of homesteading stuff. I mean, the greenhouse was cool, but that was 99% you and Taylor and me walking around going, how can I help?
Hey, we were
So
holding the walls up.
we
We were
were literally
structurally integral.
while my honeybees were getting in our face, being like, why are you here next to my hive? Yeah, yeah. And you gave me some of your ice cream and you gave me some of your lip balm that you made with the tallow, and both are amazing. And I have used both every single day since then. I've been like, oh my God, thank you, Mickayla. Every time.
Yeah, I have used, you say you've used the ice cream every single
Hey,
day.
well, I couldn't think of a verb that more aptly went with both. You get it. You know what I'm talking about.
Did I give you two lip balms? I planned to. I don't
Hmm.
know. Okay, good.
You did. And I'm very
Should have
glad
gave
you
you
did.
two ice creams.
No,
That would
you
have been.
shouldn't have.
I have like six in my freezer now, and I'm like, good thing Taylor's eating this too, because I could devour the whole thing immediately.
Yeah, and now that you gave me the recipe and I have all the sheep milk, dangerous
Just
game.
making ice cream. That's the sole product of your farm now.
I mean, pretty much I've just been making yogurt and butter, so it seems like it's time to mix it up. do some ice cream
Yeah.
instead.
Well, you'll have to let me know if you try any fun flavors for it.
The thing that I thought in my head, I'm not going to say out loud. Um,
But I need to know. You you
I
can't just
was
say
just,
that.
I was just going to give myself shit. I was like, yeah, I'm trying to just make myself eat 3 meals a day, not even nutritious meals, just eat 3 times a day. When I get around to fun and creative ice cream recipes, I'll let you know. Don't hold your breath.
Oh, I thought you were going with ice cream was going to be one of those meals when you first said that. It's just 3 meals a day, but they're just all ice cream.
Eh, I could do that too.
All right. Well, I feel like that was a very thorough explanation of our last few days. With that being said, let's actually talk about the topic of the day, which is the podcast, why we started this podcast, and what it's like having a podcast. So I guess let's start out with talking about what inspired us to start this podcast. I think we might have mentioned this previously, like briefly, but we could get into it a little bit more.
I remember texting you. It had to have been like September 2023. And I don't know, every once in a while I get these ideas and I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but I'm not gonna act on that. But this one just kind of like nagged on my brain for a little bit too long, and I was like, nah, I'll text Mickayla and like feel it out. And I was like, not that either one of us needs another project because that's absolutely laughable, but like, what would you think about us starting a podcast, especially as, kind of centering on our voices as women in this homesteading sphere? And then your response was something along the lines of, so funny you say that. I'm actually thinking about starting a podcast with one of my other friends.
Yeah, that had been on my mind, I think, since the previous year. I would say, like, our first fall here, I was starting to think about, like, it'd be really cool to start a podcast. Like, that maybe that's one of my New Year goals for like 2023 question mark. I think that's the year that we started this. Yeah. Um, and I just like I didn't know who I'd do it with, and I didn't really want to do it by myself. I'm not good at talking when I don't have like someone to converse with and bounce ideas off of. But I did feel like it would be interesting to like put that perspective out into the world. If nothing else, to kind of document in like a longer format the happenings around building the homestead from a beginner's perspective. And I feel like I do that in my YouTube videos, but I wanted to do it in a voice like longer format where it's more acceptable to like ramble about, the million little things about your garden that were exciting that week. And I reached out to Red earlier that summer, and we had been talking about doing it, and then you had reached out to me, and we ended up kind of all combining into one little group and started to plan that. And we did end up recording with the three of us for the first couple of episodes.
Yeah, it was fun to get to plan that and start that with the three of us. And I mean, it's me and you now, but I do really still enjoy those episodes with Red. And that's like how I met Red, is through you and through this. And now, for me, getting together with the same group of people like twice a year is like a lot. I don't see large groups of people very frequently, but I'm really grateful for that. I don't think that I would feel as integrated in that group if it hadn't been for, this podcast starting and all of that. So that's really interesting and has built community for me, but also one of my main motivators for the social media stuff, because I'm not someone who necessarily enjoys being in front of a camera or like feels at home in front of a camera, much less, just talking about stuff for an hour and a half, and then publishing it online forever where it never dies. But one of the things that I try to do with my social medias is create what I wish existed out there. And my YouTube channel, which I've neglected lately, so that I could take care of myself, has its own avenues to do that. But I feel like this also has its own unique ways that it lends itself to building the sort of community around homesteading that I wish had been easier for me to find when I started to put my foot in that door, or at least trying to put my foot in the door. So it's different for everybody, right? Everybody's looking for whatever suits them. But for me, what I really wish that I could have found when I was getting into this is that homesteading community that's not necessarily built around, a heterosexual couple with kids and they have built their life around not having a 9 to 5 job. And, maybe it's more religious, maybe it's all of these things that homesteading has been very represented as. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I want to be so, so clear. I'm not trying to attack anybody's way of life. I'm just saying that as someone who doesn't identify with a single one of those things, it made me wonder when I was starting to get into this space, like, is there room for me here? Like, is it possible? Like, I don't have a partner, I don't have kids, I'm not religious, like, I'm not in this for any of that. I'm here for my own reasons, and I don't know if I can find a home in this. I don't know if there's space for me. So I try to loudly exist in my own life in ways that if people want to see that and want to find that and, want to latch onto that a little bit to make them feel confident in existing in those ways, then great. And of course, I'm not for everybody either, and I'm not trying to be.
Yeah, I feel like as a person, I am really good and I have been really good my entire life about fitting myself into places where I don't necessarily like completely belong. I don't completely fit with all of the like check boxes. I've always been like a little bit outside the box in every group I'm in. I fit well and can like mesh into different communities. And like the homesteading world kind of being one of them, I feel like I can totally hang out with and get along with the average mainstream homesteader that you would think of. Like I'm cool with that. But like you said, it was something of not seeing like representation of couples in their 20s without kids, maybe married, maybe not. Even not couples, like even just finding you on YouTube, like your channel, just like people starting homesteads who are like young and who are working jobs to pay their bills and aren't doing like subsistence homesteading or subsistence farming, things like that. Just like all like checking those boxes of like, okay, I relate to this, and this, but I'm not seeing much of any of those things represented, let alone like the whole package of those things. And like you said, like you're never gonna relate to every single aspect of some other person. But I really loved the idea of one, documenting the startup and like all of the beginning things and the beginning feelings and hardships that were happening here, as well as being a kind of like a lighthouse of, okay, hey, we're here, we exist, we're a part of this community too, and there is space for other kinds of people.
I think there's a huge amount of value in creating educational content, or at the very least, relatable content for beginners in any subject as a beginner. Because once you're integrated into it for a handful of years, once you're integrated into it for a decade, so many of those basic building blocks are so entrenched in you at that point that you don't even think to explain them. And that's not a bad thing, right? Like at that point, you have a strength on a different level. But there, I always enjoy learning from people who can truly go back to like the basics, because if you try to build a huge knowledge base not having a solid foundation, it's probably not going to go very well. And like me, you will learn things the hard way. And you'll get there eventually too, right? But yeah, that was also a huge motivator for me. That was more so me building my personal YouTube channel was like I wish I could have seen someone, especially a woman, who went off and did this by herself, not having grown up in it, not having done it, and be like, I wish I could see another person do it so that I know it's possible. And like, I'm in this place where I just kind of gotta go for it. I kind of gotta jump anyway. Um, because if I don't do it, I'm gonna drive myself insane. And yeah, once I was in that position, it was like, well, it's gonna be cringy, but I can document it and like I can lend that. Uh, all of my flaws and mistakes and everything else. I just don't go back and watch my old videos because I can't handle that.
It's so rough to hear yourself talking on camera when you first started talking on camera. I will just say that. Like, why did I do this transition in this video? Why did I talk for this long? Oh my gosh, I can't do it either. I tried once. No. However, the podcast, I feel like we do a really good job and we try to be very intentional about this. And this is something I thought of going into it about sharing the not so like scenic and pretty and beautiful moments. We don't have any issue sharing the stories about the duck poop or the bumblefoot or things that really make you want to swear. And sometimes you do. I feel like we're good about being like open with that kind of stuff, and that's something that's been really important to me and was important to me going into this. Like I try not to hold anything back.
Yeah, and especially just in this different format, you get to have conversations that maybe wouldn't flow naturally. Uh, homesteading YouTube vlog has its own flow, and especially if you're not there with another person and you're not exchanging ideas and perspectives, certain things just aren't going to come up or at least aren't going to be explored at the same depth. And so that's why I appreciate having this because recording this for an audience, I still make myself think and I still have conversations that I wouldn't have otherwise. And you bring perspectives to the table that make me go, huh, you're right. And I wouldn't have that sort of illumination if it weren't for this. So this isn't why I'm grateful for podcasting, but it's kind of turning into that.
I feel like it really, at least in from my perspective, I feel like our friendship has grown a bunch from this, and like it's really nice to have a sit down once a week where I've said this so many times on this. I feel like a broken record, but where we like sit down and we don't have to leave the house. We can just be comfy and cozy in our pajamas and or whatever, and just like hanging out on the couch and talking with each other. It's like super low pressure other than like the actual podcast information that we're working with. But yeah, it's nice to have that like form of connection, and although sometimes it is necessary, like we need breaks sometimes, not from each other, just from the busyness of life in general. I really look forward to like sitting down every week, even if sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to eat dinner in the next 5 minutes, or else I'm not going to be able to eat until 11 p.m.
Yeah, we're also good. I mean, we did that tonight, right? We're also good about texting each other, being like, "Hey, I need 15 minutes. Is that cool?" And neither one of us are ever like, "Ugh," we're both like, "Oh, great. I can totally use that 15 minutes to whatever, do
Yeah.
some random chore or, also shove food in my face so I have energy
Yeah.
to talk."
I want to go back to just like briefly touch on wanting to be a voice and have these conversations from our specific perspectives, because even though we have a lot of those check boxes in the same place, we still do have different perspectives on things and different experiences. And I think that's what makes like our dynamic interesting here. But there's a lot of YouTube channels that are these like really beautiful curated homesteading videos. There are a lot of channels that are serene and everything is beautiful and curated, and they're just really relaxing and um, peaceful to watch. And then there are family YouTube channels, and there are YouTube channels that are like family oriented, but they're like one of the parents of the kids. Like it's usually like a couple and children. Um, one of the parents is like the main person who's filming things and doing that. A lot of the times it's mom. So like that's kind of hard to relate to, other than maybe like recipes and planting tips and kind of stuff like that. A lot of the channels are guys who are doing most of the filming, whether they're single or they have a family or a partner or whatever. And so I really, for our YouTube channel and for podcast specifically, it's a really unique perspective. I feel like to have you, Sage, who's someone who's doing homesteading completely solo and working 9 to 5 and just trying to juggle all this stuff on your own with the juxtaposition of me, and I have the context of like Taylor as well, and our like renovation stuff on top of the homestead stuff. It's just like, I don't know, it's unique. And I feel like we've gotten feedback both for the podcast and I have personally with of people being like, hey, I want to do like the live in a camper and renovate or build a house on property and start the homestead, and like asking for advice or just like saying thank you for putting this out there, because I relate to it and it's like inspirational, or you know, sometimes it's educational, and that means so much to me.
Also, not to, I don't know, toot our own horns through a parade for ourselves, but I do enjoy and appreciate that we make a point to have conversations around homesteading that not necessarily that other people avoid, but they're just kind of hard to get into, or maybe sometimes uncomfortable to get into, and it gets glossed over. And so, that leads to a couple things that leads to people who maybe aren't in that sphere having fundamental misunderstandings of how that all works, but also can feel maybe invalidating if you're in it and you're like, oh my gosh, these other people like aren't struggling with these same things, or like just aren't coming up against the same obstacles, and like it's got to be me if that's not a communal experience or a shared experience. And so I really like that we kind of try to put the honest stuff out there, but also have those larger conversations that maybe, I don't know what to call it. It's not necessarily philosophical, but like putting it in the context of larger society or what's going on or just any of those things. I enjoy that a lot. That's a huge reason for me of why I continue to want to do this.
One last note on that. You just like reminded me of this. And speaking of the like talking about things that are going on, like the bigger topics and like things that are hard to talk about, I feel like a lot of the times when I see homesteading channels posting about politics or the greater things that are going on in the world, it's very divisive, and it's usually trying to get people to click on the video, and it's meant to attract negativity and bad comments, hateful comments, things like that. I something else that I appreciate, like both of us separately and as a like collaboration on this podcast, like we both want to put out into the world like positivity and community and just solutions to our ideas for solutions to things, and just welcoming people into the homesteading community and not being or causing division.
I do also appreciate that we are coming to a place, at least, where we're also not afraid to speak our mind and say things, knowing that people aren't going to agree with us. And so, like, not doing that to a fault, right? There's a balance with everything. I also appreciate that we're not out here fear mongering. I have no desire to do that. But I also am in a place in my own life where I'm also not gonna be afraid to be myself in public spaces. And I'm really done swallowing stuff for the sake of other people's comfort. And part of part of the whole point of a discussion is we're all coming from different places. And so it's none of it's a competition, and we can't solve anything unless we talk about the stuff, right? So we've all got to be able to have a discussion and acknowledge and understand and appreciate that we're not all going to walk away from that discussion with the same conclusions or same understandings. Uh, and that's part of being people together.
I mean, that's one of the scariest things that I've kind of encountered in general with being on social media is like actually saying like this is who I am, this is how I feel, and if you don't like it, leave a rude comment and I'll just read it on my podcast. Like it makes me laugh.
I'll make more content off of it, is what I'll do.
Yeah, yeah. But all jokes aside, I really don't go into any form of content like trying to put other people down. I really think that it's a huge goal of like the podcast in general to like welcome people into the homesteading community and make them feel like they belong here. The next thing that I feel like we should talk about, in case anybody wants to be welcomed into the podcasting community, is what podcasting is actually like.
I I feel a little bit like an outsider because I don't even listen to podcasts. And so going into it, I definitely didn't have a great idea of what it's actually like to make that kind of content. But I had some clue, like it's, had previous experience with YouTube stuff. And so it's like, okay, yeah, I get the gist. You sit there and you have a conversation and whatever, and you record it and you edit it and you put it up. I I think I anticipated that it would be a little smoother in terms of like the raw footage, right? I didn't think it would be as start and stop. And we sit here and we're like, what was I saying? And how do I bring in that next topic? And, you know, struggling with all those things because I thought it would be more like an in-person conversation. But part of it is like we're both really comfortable with each other and like our brains just don't totally have that setting. And so we feel free to be like, my brain's blank. I don't know. I don't know what words to come out of my mouth next. So that's been, I mean, that's part of what makes it fun, but that's definitely not what I envisioned going into making these things.
I think we can only speak for ourselves. So anybody who's listening to this, it may be a completely different experience for you if your brain works as a typical person. Um, Ours, however, do not. And we have a lot of pausing and issues with trying to figure out what to say next. Something that we kind of decided at the beginning was we were gonna do like a rough outline of what we wanted to say for these episodes, but we didn't want to do like a full-on script because we didn't want to be reading off of it. We wanted our responses to be like genuine and as much in the moment as they possibly could be. And then there's absolutely no way we could wing this person. Well, at least I'm speaking for me. I could not wing this. I need something to go off of, and I have to ponder this for like a couple weeks beforehand to be able to have enough thoughts to put out there.
Yeah, if we didn't have outlines or, plan it to some degree ahead of time, I'm not sure what I would say, but it's definitely not anything of substance or that I would care to publish.
I guess like overall, it is the experience of podcasting easier or harder than you expected?
I think it's harder than I expected, but also more enjoyable in its own ways in the moment. So it balances out. What about you?
I think the actual act of making the podcast is easier than I expected it to be. Like, I'm usually really bad at conversations, but the fact that we choose our topics like a month ahead of time, usually, and I have time to mull them over and really gather my thoughts helps. If we were to just sit down and be like, okay, what do you want to talk about tonight? I would actually have a panic attack. Absolutely not. But the finding time to edit and make time for the social media aspect of things and posting stuff is with my internet. That's been a lot more difficult and like technical issue-y than I expected.
Yeah, there's been a lot of technical issues with all kinds of stuff. I mean, we just recently switched the platform that we record on because our previous platform was just so glitchy. And then there's been episodes where my internet connection was cutting in and out, and you know, I couldn't hear the other half of the conversation, and I gotta sit here and look like I'm engaged when I have no idea what's happening. There's stuff that comes up, and sometimes our schedules work where we're pretty flexible. Like we've been super flexible the last handful of weeks in terms of what day we record, because I've been pretty chill in terms of my schedule. But there's definitely times of the year where that wouldn't work, right? Like we have our stuff that has to get done. So it's a lot to balance.
How much time do you think we spend on like one episode?
Okay, so we trade off editing, but for a typical episode, if it's my episode that I'm owning it. So we probably spend 2.5 to 3 hours to sit down and talk because we gotta catch up beforehand, kind of warm up to be able to have a somewhat charismatic conversation. And then we gotta talk about our topic. We gotta get through things, and then at the end, we might have some logistical whatevers to talk about. So that's already we'll call that 3 hours, right? There's beforehand the prep to do an outline. If it's educational, maybe I spend an hour writing it. If it's just kind of chatty, maybe I'll throw some thoughts down for 10 minutes. And then editing it takes forever. Editing it takes 1.5 times whatever the raw footage is. So if we have 2 hours of raw footage, then it takes me 3 hours to edit it. And then I usually listen back to it before I export it and send it off to you to listen to. What is that? That's at least 8 hours.
Yeah, I think you're at about 8 hours with the listening back and the editing. And then we make the thumbnails and any social media content. The social media stuff takes way longer than I would like for it to, but that's just the like I think I'm millennial enough to be annoyed that I have to make the videos on my phone and I can't make them on my computer. Like I want to use my computer to make them, but I have to use Instagram and I just despise that. So it takes way longer than it should. But I think I would say after if I actually do all of the social media posts that I'm supposed to, the stories, everything, I'd say it takes up to like 12 hours because I usually end up having to go back and deal with some sort of uploading issue because of my internet. But yeah, I'd say like upwards of 8 to 12 hours for each episode. Not both of us, but I'd say at least like whoever's editing that week is like 8 to 12 hours of work.
Yeah, I forgot about the short form content because I haven't been posting that lately. But if I do any short form content for Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts or whatever else, if I clip it from the podcast episode itself, that takes me probably 45 minutes to go and search that out and edit it down and export it and upload it and put a description on it and hashtags and everything else. Yeah, it's a lot. And then if it's not our week, basically our only responsibility is to listen to it. And I've also been bad about getting them to you ahead of time. I'll text you Sunday morning and be like, "Hey, it's uploading."
Yeah, I didn't have time to listen to it this week, but I was out planting tomatoes
Yeah, that's on me.
and sweating, just like drenched in sweat. So the phone wasn't on me. Yeah, I think the person who's not editing during the week has like the recording time, obviously that's like 3 hours. And then if there's any other prep, like if we usually one of us will do the notes, one or the other, and then the other person will add their notes into like the outline that somebody else did. So I'd say like 3 to 4 hours, even if you're not the one who's editing the episode that week. It's a lot. It's a lot of time. I think it's worth it, but it is a commitment.
It's definitely more time than I thought it would be going into it. Not that I had a very definitive idea of what that would look like, but it's more, and I underestimated every week somehow. Like we've been doing this for more than a year, and I'm still like, oh right, I have to spend an evening doing that. Forgot to budget that in my weekly schedule.
Yeah, I really didn't know what to think going into it time-wise, other than the podcast that I do listen to. It's like their full-time job. like they tour and they have these fancy recording studios that they sit in with their like overhead mics and everything. And they always say like we cut out all the time as we go pee and like get up to go get a snack or something. And it's like they record for like 3 or 4 hours at a time. So I'm like, I kind of knew recording would take a while, but I didn't even think about the editing. The editing takes so long because it's conversation. It's not just me talking, like it is in YouTube videos.
And you have to find as many ums as you can and the likes and the things that we both do. I'm not attacking you right now, I promise. You know, everybody has their idiosyncrasies. I probably say or so all the time, and I try to cut those out of the beginnings of my sentences. So it's a lot that goes into it to piece it together to make it as cohesive as we can for you all.
I just got distracted because you said I try to cut out the uhs and the so's, and then you said so. But what was the other thing? There's lip smacking sometimes, and now I'm gonna be self-conscious about it the rest of this episode. It just happens, okay? Unexpected things we've learned. There are so many. Like I don't even know. I don't know where to go with that. We've learned a lot of technical things. I learned some behind the scenes stuff in YouTube that I didn't know existed before, as far as like podcast stuff goes. We've learned about RSS feeds and just all of the tech stuff and like how to get it to sound good and how to pause and not talk over each other. There's a lot of little things like that. I feel like I've just kind of inherently started to pick up on.
I know I've learned a lot going through the process of this, but I couldn't sit here and tell you what they are. It's all the minutia, right? It's the thousand little things that I didn't have the first clue about before getting into this. And there are still things that basically you own that I don't know all the details of. And I would hope that goes vice versa a little bit, but it might not. Yeah, I mean, I think getting it set up was the big hurdle. It's not like we have to go in and link it through Spotify to every single other platform we can think about doing, right? I know we had a hell of a time getting set up with Apple to begin with. That was a freaking nightmare. And so not all of them we constantly deal with, but certainly getting the ball rolling, there was a steep learning curve.
Yeah, I feel like we also have kind of learned who prefers which tasks as far as like the to-do list goes. Like you usually handle responding to comments and messages or emails or whatever, for the most part. And then I do a lot of the like if there's like graphics things that need to be done on like Canva or whatever, like I make those, updating our thumbnails and stuff like that. And then finding guests. I feel like I have less of an issue. It still feels quite cringy to me. I will be completely honest, but I have less of an issue like reaching out and like cold messaging people and being like, "Hey, want to be on my podcast?" And it still feels weird every time. And I feel like sometimes they look at me and they're like, who do you think I am? Because I'm not into the homestead world. I'm like, yes, I want you to be a representative of more people in the homestead world. That's a whole topic, but it feels cringe sometimes. But I feel like we've started to find our preferred methods of participation as far as the podcast goes.
And also just in this last season of life for me, you know, not just in the podcast, that's the most concrete example, but just more in general in our friendship. You've covered me and been understanding of me in some ways that I have deeply needed and is really appreciated and is kind of cool because I've super honestly never had that in a friendship before. I've never had a friendship where I could be like, "Hey, I have 2% capacity today and probably for the next 6 months." And like that's what you're gonna get from me. And I'm so sorry. It's not a representation of how much I value you. It's just where I'm at with myself right now. And yeah, having a friend and a business partner who doesn't make me feel guilty for that, who doesn't resent that about me. Oof, that's a big one.
Yeah, I feel like we're both really good at being flexible with that kind of stuff, and we work very well together for sure. I feel like the collaboration that we're able to conjure up, even if we've had a stressful week, we do really enjoy having these conversations. Most of the time, it's not stressful. We can sit down and have a chat beforehand, kind of chill, and then we get into the episode. And we end up having some really good discussions and things that make me think about what we've talked about going forward. Like I'll think about it for the whole week afterwards. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, what Sage said was something that I should think about more. Like it's very insightful to have the conversation and to be out of just my own head sometimes about this kind of stuff. Okay, so with that being said, do you have any memorable like favorite discussions or topics that we've recorded, I guess, so far?
Put me on the spot, why don't you? I actually continue to think about one of our very first episodes, which is what is homesteading, because that was pretty close to home for me in terms of my own personal mental hurdles getting into this sort of thing, where I fell down the rabbit hole that a lot of us did in the lockdown and quarantine and everything else with the homesteading videos. But it, at least what was, fed to me by the algorithm was very much this templated, not my social structure of life. And the longer that I'm in this homesteading sphere, the more I appreciate the not cookie cutter people and examples of that. And so to be able to sit down and have a whole episode about like breaking down these sort of barriers around what counts as homesteading and that theme of self-sufficiency that continues to come up and kind of debunking a lot of that. I think about that a lot. That sticks with me for sure.
Think some of my favorite conversations that we've had so far are some of the more recent ones that are getting into those bigger topics that are hard to talk about because they do make me think. They make me think so deeply about like what I want to say and portray to the world because sometimes I still have that fear of like, okay, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I really have to think about how I use my words and put them on the internet because it's going to be there for people to listen to. And if people are listening to my words, I don't take that lightly. So those topics really make me consider and think about the big pictures of all those things, like the how society eats now. That was one of my favorite episodes. That one was really interesting. I feel like that was one of the first ones that we started to kind of get into those bigger topics. But like the community one, I really enjoyed. And I wouldn't say that the hurricane recap episode was my favorite conversation to have, but I feel like it kind of launched us into those deeper topics. Like that was kind of a turning point for some of the stuff that we wanted to talk about. So I would say I appreciate that episode for getting deep on things.
I definitely agree with you. And I absolutely enjoyed recording the community episode a lot. That's another one of those that I continue to go back to. Just with all the stuff that's happening in the world, and when I think about what's my place in all of this and what am I doing with this life, I might as well do something with it. And not that I think sitting here and having a conversation for an hour is gonna drastically change anything, but I think opening the doors to those sorts of conversations, uh, to be listened to and continued beyond that is important to me.
I fully agree. Honestly, I remember making the thumbnail for the community, like how to build community through homesteading one with all of our guests that we've had on, and I was like almost crying. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like we've had so many awesome freaking people on here. Um, yeah, I was like about to tear up when I started making that, like trying to fit everybody on there. I was like, there's so many. It's hard to squeeze everyone in here.
What a wonderful problem to have, though.
Yes, for sure.
How about listener messages or just listener responses in general? Are there any that you've come across that have stuck with you that you think about all the time?
Honestly, there are some funny ones that I think about a lot. I wouldn't say there's any like super sweet, poetic ones that I remember consistently. I know that there are so many of them, and that's why they're kind of hard to remember sometimes because we get a lot of nice comments. There are some emails and messages on like Instagram that I can like pretty vividly think of, but those are more personal ones, and I don't want to like share the information of some of those. But I have one that I saved that I want to read. It's not just this one that I appreciate, but all of the ones that are similar to this. It says the homestead life sure isn't always pretty, but it's all part of the adventure. From dealing with chicken coop mishaps to unexpected animal issues, we've all been there. It's about the messy moments just as much as the beautiful sunsets and the fresh produce. I love the real talk in this episode. And I feel like that really relates to what we talked about at the beginning of this episode, like how we wanted to portray homesteading life in like the most realistic and documentary way of like this is what it's like and we're learning. This is just the process.
I am very appreciative that we have a lot of very kind listeners, and we still get our fair share of rough messages and comments just in general. But I mean, the vast majority is just very kind, very supportive people. And I think in taking our short little unplanned, mostly unplanned break, seeing messages come in from people that maybe hadn't left comments before or maybe hadn't messaged us before asking like, "Hey, are you guys going to make more content?" I think I was a little surprised, honestly. Um for one, I'm still shocked that anyone listens to these, but it was interesting to see a different wave of people in so many words say, "Hey, I appreciate your voice. I've missed it." That was interesting to me, and especially at a time where I was like, I have no gas in my tank. That helps. That helps reconfigure priorities, that helps remotivate and figure out where we're going with this thing. But there were a couple other episodes or things that we did with waves of positive feedback that came to mind for the first one. The first time I felt that was probably when like we each did our spotlight episodes. And in mine, I decided to get a little honest about like some of the personal relationships and things that I had been through and things that I had experienced. And people were so kind. Like, I don't know, just talking about that in general is nerve-wracking, but also putting it out on the internet and this like, hey, this is our eighth episode. Get to know me. Haha. here's here's some kind of heavy stuff. Um, that that was cool. People reaching out both that I kind of know and complete strangers being like, "Hey, thank you for putting words to an experience I didn't know how to put words to." It's kind of mind-blowing. And then also recently talking about our experiences being neurodivergent, we got a wave of, "Oh my gosh, thank you for saying that." Emails and comments and messages and everything else. And I remember an email, and I'm not gonna spill the details about it, but both you and I, when we read that email, it was so, so sweet. We were like, "Oh my gosh, I definitely want to cry." Um, and that was an episode that, at least especially that part, we enjoyed recording and especially listening back to it. We are like, yeah, this is good. But it's always still so nerve-wracking to post that stuff, you know? You're still like, how is this gonna be received? But yeah, another instance of like just saying the thing out loud that a lot of us get so, I don't know, nervous to even like acknowledge. And then when you find out that other people are going through those same things and having those same experiences, it's very deeply validating, at least. That's how it's been for me.
I would even say that any constructive criticism or negative comments we've gotten, for the most part, they've been like fairly respectful as far as not being like so rude or anything. Like I'm like, oh, I have to delete this immediately because I don't want this in the internet. And I think that kind of goes to show like the way we conduct the podcast and really try to be open to a lot of different viewpoints and welcoming of people. But yeah, getting messages, especially it's something about emails. Something about emails feels so personal, and we've gotten some like really intense, not in a bad way, intense emails of like people spilling their hearts and souls to us about how much they appreciate the podcast. And that seriously means so much to me. I, one, I have a hard time responding to messages because I like freak out and I'm like, I don't know what to say to this because this is profound. And like, yeah. So if my response to anybody has ever been something that you're like, why didn't they respond differently than this? It's because I freaked out. But yeah, no, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, as far as emails go, I think one of my favorite ones that wasn't just like straight up sweet pouring their heart out like, oh my gosh, I just want to give you a giant hug. Was somebody who emailed us after our community episode and said that when they recommend it to other people, their caveat is it's pretty white, pretty straight, but I think they're decent humans. And I think we should incorporate that into our branding, just an advertisement for the podcast.
The bio.
I don't think either one of us have ever said that we're straight, just for the record. You're assuming that one, my friend.
I think that should be our bio. We think we're pretty decent humans. Not we are. We think we are.
You gotta add, a little bit of reasonable doubt in there.
Yeah. Moving on from all of the kind and lovely and funny comments, I really appreciate that last one. That one's good. Would you recommend podcasting to other people?
If you're asking me if you should do something, I'm always gonna be the person that says, hell yeah, you should do it. But I mean, if you're a person who has a desire to do it for any reason, try it. Like, even if you try it and it's not your thing, hey, you figured it out, right? I would always rather try the thing, say the thing, do the thing, and I don't want to say regret, but realize through that process that not for me, than sit there and wonder like, oh, what if I had just gone for it? So because of that lens, I always tell people to go for it. So yeah, do it.
I'm totally an enabler, so yeah, I would definitely say the same thing. Um, that goes for anything. If someone's like, "Hey, should I get more sheep?" I'd be like, "Heck yeah, you should." Should I
I
get
always
ducks?
text I
Absolutely.
always text Mickayla when I'm like, she's not gonna tell me no, but I need to talk about this with someone.
Yeah, whenever you're at the nursery and you're like, "Do I need this plant?" And the answer is always absolutely. You absolutely need the plant. You can't have too
Exactly.
many. Yeah, I agree. If you have any inkling of interest in podcasting, I think I would recommend it in terms of try it and give it some time to like get used to it because I think the setup of it is like the rockiest part. So even if you're like one person who wants to just like document your thoughts and you want to use your voice memo on your phone, voice memo and record whenever and then figure that out later. Like you'll figure it out. It just takes a little bit to orchestrate all of the technical stuff on like the behind the scenes side of things.
Okay, so what if we were starting this over? What if we were starting from square one? Is there anything that you would do differently in terms of how we've set this up?
I don't think so. I feel like we have found a really good rhythm with it and we've gotten to a place where it's like we know what we're doing. I probably would have started with a different platform than we started with because that was just a nightmare from the beginning. But yeah, I really can't think of anything else. I feel like maybe starting with a different social media strategy at the beginning, but I really like I don't have any insight into what that would be. I would say like maybe promoting it earlier on than we did to like get momentum for it. But that's literally like all I could think of.
If I were starting from square one with this, knowing what I know now, I would probably not worry so much about those very information heavy episodes. I still enjoy doing the educational stuff, but I think in the beginning we were so focused on like, okay, it's got to be a balance of this and this too. And now I think we give ourselves permission to focus on, I guess, what I would call like the chattier episodes or those things that aren't necessarily so information based, or even when we're doing an educational episode, still having a way to make it more conversational instead of just like, here's a bunch of information, because we're people who go down some serious rabbit holes and like, we love that, right? We love just give me all the information, I'll consume it. But not everybody likes to be waterboarded with that like we do.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't even think about that, but I think people enjoy at least based on our numbers on like Spotify and YouTube, people enjoy the conversational and philosophical topics more than the educational. And the educational ones take a lot more work on our end too, as far as research and making our free PDFs and stuff goes. So I'm glad we did those. I'm glad we have the like core set of episodes. Like, I feel like as a homesteading podcast, we had to kind of check those off our list. But now it's fun to kind of get into these more interesting topics. And I feel like we can still do educational ones, but it's more like what we're interested in researching at the moment. Like we're thinking about doing a bricks levels one because we are like, I want to learn more about this. So it's like our own deep dive, and then we convey it to you guys so you don't have to do the research.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah. So you've mentioned a few times that like you've hit burnout stage, especially the last couple of months, or I guess earlier this year, in life in general. But what keeps you going as far as the podcast is concerned?
Yeah, I've been asking myself some questions about social media in general, specifically homestead related, and even more specifically, podcasts. Like, what's my role here, right? Like, how do I do just a little bit of good with what I'm doing? That's been forefront in my mind in every aspect of my life. And this stuff is no exception. So, really finding a way to direct this to even in small ways start creating the community and, you know, the world that I want to live in. That's what's keeping me going at this current moment is this is one of my forms of resistance to all of the division and what I would just in general label like hate, honestly, that's going around right now. This is an outlet for me to, in certain ways, speak my mind. This is an outlet for me to be able to anchor some reason and some hope and some inclusion to the best of my ability because I do have 800,000 things going on. And I am just one person just in one little old life and like I'm doing the best I can. Everybody's doing the best they can right now. So this is my way that I can show up consistently and provide something that I deem of value. That's really where I'm at with it right now and that's what keeps me going and keeps wanting to make this even though it does take whatever 12 hours every other week. And 4 hours the weeks other than that.
That was a very profound answer, and I was fully expecting you to say something like your espresso machine.
I mean that too.
Oh my gosh. I completely agree with that, and I don't want to repeat everything you just said because it was a lot in a good way. But I I think I'll add to that my one of my reasons that I continue to show up here is it's just like an anchor in my week where even if the anchor is on Tuesday versus Thursday versus Friday sometimes. Like I know that we're gonna sit down and we're gonna have a conversation. It's gonna let me think about things, and it's something to ponder for the week. It kind of just like almost like a weekly intention of something to think about and to focus my thoughts on. And I really like that.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of She Said Homestead. We hope you enjoyed our chat. Before we say goodbye, we'd love to hear from you. Send your homesteading stories to us at shesaidhomestead@gmail.com. We can't wait to share them on the air. To stay connected, follow us on Instagram for updates and sneak peeks at what's coming up next.
If you like video podcasts, make sure you subscribe to the She Said Homestead YouTube channel too. We can't thank you enough for being part of the She Said Homestead community. Until next time, happy homesteading.